Orchid flowers always grab your attention at the store, then you bring it home and a month later the flowers start to wilt, the leaves start turning yellow, and then you're left with a sad looking plant. I have a bunch of these Phalaenopsis orchids, or sometimes they're referred to as the moth orchid. They're one of the most popular houseplants in the world, yet a lot of people seem to struggle with their basic care. So I know a lot of people actually throw these out once they're done flowering, but they can live for many, many years. So I'm going to give a complete guide on how to care for these plants, everything from the light, water, the type of soil to grow it in, and then how to get it to bloom again and look gorgeous like this. You have to learn how to read your orchid by the leaves as well as the roots. These two things will tell you everything that your plant needs. A healthy plant will have leaves that are nice and plump and leathery. If your leaf looks like a soggy piece of pizza, then it's dehydrated. You can see this one has a bunch of wrinkles in it and it's just looking limp and not healthy. So this one definitely needs to be watered. This one right here, it is looking nice and green and healthy. It's been recently watered. So this is what a healthy orchid leaf should look like. And same thing with the roots. If they are nice and kind of brighter green and plump, then it is well hydrated. But if you come over to this one, you can see the same thing. They are quite wrinkly and they're a bit of a silvery color. Now, if they are green, then they're healthy. If they're silvery, they're thirsty. And if they're brown, they're dead. So these ones right here, at some point, they have all either been overwatered or dried out. And these ones are just crispy, crunchy, dead roots. But thankfully, there are some new roots right there. And the ones in the pot are actually really, really healthy. If you follow me in my channel, you'll know that I'm a chronic underwaterer, and you can see I've definitely let this one get really dry. Now, the thing about orchids, when they grow in their natural habitat, they don't grow in the soil like on the forest floor. They actually latch onto trees. They are what's called epiphytes, so they will gather moisture and nutrients from these big roots here, just from the ambient air. So the cool thing is when you water these plants, they will actually, like right before your eyes, turn from a silvery green to a bright green just by adding water right on top of them. So what I'm going to do is soak it and then drain it. So you can see those roots are starting to turn bright green. So I'm going to put this entire watering can in the pot and just let it soak there for a minute. And then I'm simply going to let all the water drain out of the pot. So look at the difference from the silvery portion to the now bright green. So this is a cool feature of these Phalaenopsis orchids. That's why you have orchids in this like chunky bark mixture, just because if you had it in a regular potting soil, these roots would basically suffocate and they will rot very quickly. So orchids need a lot of airflow. The roots need a lot of airflow, and that's why having them in this big chunky orchid mixture is absolutely critical to their survival. This one's in a clear orchid pot. You can see it has some slits on the side for airflow so those roots can breathe. And same thing, I'm just going to dump this entire pot, saturating this orchid bark and getting those roots nice and bright green. Even for this little mini Phalaenopsis, just getting a little dunk. Gonna let that drip dry and then put it right back in its pot like that. When you're watering an orchid, you want to avoid getting water on the leaves, and especially down in this area, which is called the crown, because it can cause rot. But if you happen to get water on it like that, not to worry. You can just take a paper towel like this and then use the corner to just dab in the middle, and it'll soak up all the water in the crown there, and then you can just clean off the leaves and you're as good as new. One thing that you'll sometimes hear or even see is when people put ice cubes in an orchid plant like that. The concept is that it will slowly melt and eventually it'll just like rehydrate the plant. But this can actually cause cold shock to the roots and shock the plant. So don't actually do that. Just place it in a container of water, let it soak. If you need to add more water, just water it in like that and let it drain through. That's all it takes. And this is room temperature water. I definitely don't want to shock the roots on this plant. Now for light, most of my orchids are under grow lights, like over here. And I also have a bunch upstairs that are on my plant shelf that do get artificial light from grow lights. Now these are often marketed as low light plants, but low light doesn't mean no light. So these plants grow under the canopy of trees, so they get a combination of low light as well as direct light as the light kind of shines through the leaves and branches and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of equates it to bright indirect light. But what does that actually mean? That means it's kind of in that classification of medium light. Now, if it's not getting enough light, you're probably going to see really dark green leaves. This one's okay, but if you see really dark green, then it's probably starved of light. If you see a plant that looks like this one has some kind of purple splotches on the leaves. This is, I guess, the equivalent of sun stressing. I think this is a pretty good level of light, but if you start to see it getting like really bleached out, like turning yellow or kind of white, then the light is just way too intense. Now, if you're unsure of the type of light that your plant is getting, just get yourself a light meter. There's a couple free versions on your phone as well. I'm gonna place these, or this, right at the leaf. It's getting around 200 foot candles. This one is getting low light. Right here, it's around 250 foot candles. So anywhere between 50 and 250 is low light, 250 to 500 is medium light. So over here, where that one that had purple on it, it's about 400 foot candles. So this is medium light in this section right here. And this right here is low light. So this is the one that's getting around 400 foot candles. And this one would be getting around that 150 to 250 foot candles. So you can see the difference between the color of these two plants. So this one is a bit more lighter, and then it has those purple splotches, whereas this one has a darker green leaf. Now, if you have yours in natural sunlight, maybe an east-facing window would be perfect. It would get some morning direct sunlight. If it's a west or south-facing window, those get much brighter, harsher sun throughout the day. So maybe pull it back a foot or two, or even have a sheer curtain, and it should be fine. Now, two real quick tidbits of information. Do not fertilize an orchid when it is in bloom, and do not repot an orchid when it's blooming, just because if you take it out of the pot, disturb the roots, you're probably going to shock the plant and it's going to drop all of its flowers. Also for fertilizer, I just use these little liquid drops here. So it's a 15.55 NPK value, and from my understanding is you want to fertilize when it's in its growing phase or when it's getting new leaves. So I guess if it's getting new leaves when there is a flower spike, then you can fertilize. But most times an orchid will start to push out new leaves after the flower spike has died back. So there's probably some difference of opinion out there, but I only fertilize when it's in its leafing stage of growth. I already made mention to it a little bit earlier, but the only growing medium that I use for my orchids is an orchid mixture. So this is Molly's Orchid Mix. I do have a discount code down in the description if you want to try it out. But this is just a really chunky mixture. It has some stones, it has some bark. It just is a really well-draining mixture. And like I said earlier, you want good airflow to those roots. Otherwise, they will suffocate and they will cause root rot. Now, a lot of times when you buy a new plant, you may have heard of the term death plug. Sometimes there will be like a little kind of dense plastic sponge or even moss that is just really tightly packed. When you water it, it just retains moisture for way too long, eventually rotting the roots of your plant. I'll insert some footage here. It just looks like a little plastic sponge or a little piece of plastic, or sometimes, like I said, it's just a really dense piece of moss. Now, I'm not going to repot these until this flower spike is gone, but overall the roots look really healthy right now. But if you leave it in that death plug, over time you run the risk, or there is a high risk of it rotting just because it's so dense and compact. Now, everybody wants these beautiful flowers to last forever, but they can last or survive several months as long as you're keeping up with good light and watering, making sure they're not getting too dry. Pretty much the exact opposite of what I do. But you can have these flowers last for a long time. Now, sometimes when you lose the flowers, the entire flower spike is not dead. So what happened with this one is the top portion started to turn a little bit brown, so I cut it back to the last kind of green node. And as you can see, it has sprouted a new flower spike. So you can leave it as long as this portion remains green and healthy looking. If it looks something like this one right here, this one is completely dead, and you can cut it right back as close to the stem as you can. So something like that. And eventually, as the plant pushes out new leaves, it will eventually push out a new flower spike as well. Now, some people will say they lost their initial flower spike and it's never flowered for them again, despite being many, many years. Now, there is a little trick. Now, downstairs here, it's a little bit warmer than I usually keep it. It's usually around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. In order to trigger a new flower spike, they have to go through a slightly cooling period. So generally around 4 degrees less than normal. So if I have it around 22 degrees, somewhere between 17 and 18 degrees for a month or two should trigger these orchids to get another flower spike. A lot of times this is over winter as the house obviously cools down a little bit, but right now it's April and pretty much all of my orchids are currently in flower. And that's the case with these ones down here. This one is probably one of my favorites. Got these absolutely gorgeous flowers. This one right here has these really large white ones. Down here, it's kind of this dark maroon. And then my Paphiopedilum, this is a little bit different than the Phalaenopsis. It has this absolutely gorgeous flower. This is flowered for me now twice. The last time it flowered, it had 2 flowers from one, I guess, spike or whatever, which is really, really cool. And then a couple of these other ones down here, they're getting flower spikes. I can't remember which color of flowers they have. Just gonna come around over here. This is the only one that isn't about to flower. So this one has a flower spike, and then this one has a flower spike right there as well. So beautiful, beautiful when they reflower or rebloom. You just got to give it time, give it that little bit of a temperature drop, and make sure they get enough light and good water. So that is everything you need to know to care for a Phalaenopsis orchid, as well as to get it to rebloom. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comments section. Thanks for watching all my videos. Take care, everyone. Bye.